This is our library, and it's a very dramatic room, but the only lighting that we have in here are these narrow spots. So what I'd like to do is put some accent lighting up above here, which I think will make the room even more dramatic and interesting. Let's go ahead and get started. So I like to use this WAC LED strip. So in my case, I've been using this Invisa LED light, which is the least expensive of these strips because it's the least powerful, but for accent lighting it's plenty bright enough. And it's got, adhesive on the back. And so what I've done in the past, for instance, is this cove lighting up here, which worked out really great. And then I put it normally in the 45-degree channel, but sometimes in the straight channel. Here's some more lights that are using LED strip with a Z-Wave dimmer, and then they're controlled with SmartThings. So I'd like to install the accent lights on these two walls right here where the bookshelves are. And what we have at our disposal, we have these light switches right here that operate the three different sets of circuits for these downspots, and we'll probably end up redeploying one or more of those switches. So now, how do we get power up here? Down here looks like a good opportunity, but these outlets in here are dead as a result of a prior remodeling in which the power was disconnected, and so I cannot get that reconnected directly the way it was before. So what I have in mind now is there's a stud here and there, and somewhere in between there what I'm planning to do is cut into this drywall a nice big hole, and then we will go down into the floor, drill a hole into the floor, and bring power up from below, and then put a new box right here, new outlet box. And while we're at it, let's get power reconnected to these other boxes, because I have some other things I want to do in this space too that are going to need some power. We're now in the basement below that space, and this is where the fireplace is. You can tell by the gas line that goes in. And then the back wall is a little bit deeper than this foundation, a little bit further that way. And then the other wall you can see is, you can tell approximately where that is by where that duct is. So we're going to be able to put a hole into the floor right about in that area there, and we'll be able to connect to a power. And I've got some slack in that wire right there, which is a circuit that is hardly used. So I plan to connect into that circuit to get the power up there. I made myself a plan. Now this isn't to scale, but this is an upper view showing where that gas line is, and then where the foundation is and where it ends, and then where the drywall is upstairs is right here. So the center of that space is roughly a little bit inside of the foundation. And this space right in here is where we want to take advantage of this to get a hole drilled through there. And so I blew that up a little bit more and then drew it more to scale to show where the studs are in the wall upstairs, and then here's where the opposite wall is, and this space right here is the one that we want to reach into and get a line through. So I'm going to do even more measurement and make darn sure I'm going in at the right spot before we drill that hole, but it looks like we've got a window of opportunity to get some power up there. So here's our mapping out of this wall. There are two studs right here, there's one right there, and there's another stud right about in here. And so if I can get access to wire and go to a box right here, great. If I don't, I'm going to have to cut out another hole right here to help span the wire across between these two boxes and across all of these studs right here. But I'm going to wait on this one until I find out what's going on in here. And as far as the box goes, I'd prefer to put it directly into the stud with this. If otherwise, my option is to go one like this where you just grip on the drywall. So, but that depends on what I'm worried about. It's the remote chance that there's a wire coming from this one that comes out right there. So I need to open up the wall and then make a game time decision on exactly where this box is going to go. So I cut this piece out. That worked fine. I used a really sharp utility knife, and I found out what was causing the stud finder to react up here. It was these wires. I pulled them out and got lucky. They were easy to pull through, and they've got enough slack in them that I'll be able to connect them into this box that we're going to add. So now the problem is, what are these wires? I confirmed with continuity check that this wire is connected to that outlet and the other one, so that one needs to be live, but I have no idea what these are, and I can't find anything that's not working right now. So it could have been provisions for something for the future, or maybe one of them is for this fireplace here or something like that. So what I'm going to do is put in the new box, connect this live to power, and these two, I'll bring them in the box, but I'll just put wire nuts on the wires and mark them as unknown, because I have a feeling someday I'll discover what those are for. So I've estimated the drill depth to go through that 2x4 and past the subfloor underneath needs to be in the ballpark of 2 1/4 to 2 3/4 inch long, so I've got just as small of a drill as I could find to get that length. And then the second thing is where to put our hole down there. The subfloor, or I'm sorry, the foundation ends right about here, and there's some wires downstairs right about here. So I'm going to put that hole right about in here, so I'm comfortably clearing the foundation and not going to get in the way of those wires down there. So I just drilled that hole, and I could feel it go through, so those calculations were about right. So what we'll do now is set this light over the hole and then go downstairs, see if I can find it. And there's our hole right there, and that's pretty much where I expected it to be. Now I can go through with a through hole with confidence, big enough to put some Romex through it. Alright, that bit's big enough for the cable to go through it. So I decided to use my big drill for this. Alright, we got our junction box in, and I poked through one of the openings here, and you can see we got plenty of room to make a connection in here. And I can fit the cable through there and then go up through that hole. So let's go ahead and start routing some cable. Measured the height of that box, and it's right at 3 3/4. So my marking there is 3 3/4. I'm going to go a little bit bigger than that, and then cut all the way to the stud, and then we'll secure this to the stud. Okay, I've got these things positioned against the stud. I'm going to pull this out and run it into the stud. we've got incoming power coming from below, and then I've also got the one that I marked as being associated with the plugs, and I've connected those both to this outlet. And then as a double check, let's make sure we've got continuity between the old plug and this, and we do, so we do have the right connection made. So I got this wrapped up now. The unknown wires are just tied together, and I got them labeled and saying which way they're headed, east. And then this one I've now got wired to the power and to the outlets. So now we're ready to button this up, and then we'll get our piece of drywall that we've cut out, get it back in. I'm going to go ahead and change this other outlet out too. I don't know if electricians have a special tool for this, but I ground down a screwdriver that would fit in that slot. Now we're ready to connect power to this wire in this junction box. And so this is the circuit that I want to go into, which is that lightly used circuit that goes upstairs. The thing is, I'm like 99% sure which circuit breaker is connected to this circuit, but I need to be 100% sure before I cut that wire. So I plugged in a heater upstairs into that circuit, and then I put this on here, and I can see, yep, we're getting a lot of current through there, and there's another wire with no current in it, so plenty of current in this one. So then if I go hit that, turn off that circuit breaker and come back here and there's nothing there, then I've got the right circuit. I flipped off the circuit breaker. The heater upstairs is off. I'm getting no signs of current in this thing. So I think that we are okay to cut this. Let's hope for the best, huh? I've cut those before accidentally when they were live, and I can tell you that's a good way to ruin a pair of dikes and scare you. Got the wiring all done, so we'll go flip on the circuit breaker, go up and check everything, and if it's okay, we'll put the cover back on this junction box. Okay, let's turn our circuit breaker back on. So far so good. I checked the lights in the other room. They look good. This looks good. That looks good. Alright. I put a fresh blade on this knife and then ran it along the inside edges and the outside edges so that we got a little bit of a chamfer, particularly on the outside, so that there's some place, so it's sub-flush, and then there's some place for the spackling compound to go. And then I measured, and we've got 3/8 of an inch right here where the box is protruding from the current drywall. So now I'm going to just cut this piece out. So I'll put some strips of pine trim along the edges here, and so I needed a rough idea of our dimensions, so I've got a little map made here. So I'll go cut some of that trim, and then we'll get started putting this back together. Found a piece of scrap MDF, so I use that to make the pieces. The nice thing about this stuff is that it's really easy to self-tap into it. Start to put this MDF in. So I put a mark roughly where it's halfway across, and this thing is 3 inches. So that means we've got 1.5 inches on either side, and so we need to go in about 3/4 of an inch to get to the middle of that. And I'm not cinching these up completely yet. I'm going to mark where these gaps are so that I don't try to put a screw in there. These look pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and cinch these up so their heads are a little sub-flush. good. It's going to clean up well. So my wife thinks I'm terrible at sanding and painting, so she's taken over on this. And I'll continue with the glamorous work where I need to route a wire from here basically up through the corner of this cabinetry. So I'll start drilling holes up through here until I get to the top. So that's the kind of connector that I got to get up through the wood. And so instead of drilling a gigantic hole, what I'm going to do is drill 2 holes with this side by side and then clean it up to make it into a slot using a Dremel tool. So there's a hole up in that corner there now that we can go up. And then on this level, for some reason, there's an extra support right here with a shorter, with a shorter shelf here. And so, problem is I can't get my arm around there, but I got to get up past this, and then up here, we'll just fit in that gap behind the shelf. And then up here, I've got the hole in at the top. So what I'm going to do is I put a wire on the end of this thing, and we'll push the wire up, and I'll be able to grab the top of the wire and then pull the rest of the cable up from there. So I was able to feed that wire up through that hole, and now you can see the green solid core wire there. So I'm going to grab that and pull it the rest of the way up, and then we'll feed it up through the upper hole. Alright, I got one strip plugged in, and so it works, and it gives you a little bit of a feel for what that'll look like after we've got all the strips in. So my wife finished sanding and painting the wall, so it looks pretty good, and she wonders why I'm not done yet. I've got a little ways to go still. I got this Z-Wave dimmer installed and connected with the SmartThings, and it works pretty well. So I'm going to adjust this dimmer with the SmartThings, and so I've only got a few pieces installed up there. But what I wanted to do was check on the pattern, because I was thinking about just putting in a 45 right here, and it might be simpler, but when I tried that I wasn't getting enough light in the corner, so I decided to, I tried this, and yeah, sure enough, we get better light when we let these things overlap. So I'm going to follow the original plan and overlap these. So I picked these up on eBay. So this is an aluminum channel with a diffusing cover on it, and then we'll lay the LED strip on that flat surface right there. So I have to cut many of these for the specific place where I'm putting them. So I've marked where I'm going to cut it, and to get the hacksaw started, I'm going to hit this make a groove with the Dremel tool. So got a groove started there, and now we're ready to cut it with the hacksaw. Alright, it's cut, and I deburred it with a file, so we're ready to go assemble this. So you can get these LED strips in 1 foot, for example, or I bought a 5-foot strip here. It's a little bit more cost-effective per foot this way, and this is a pretty long run, so I will use the long one, and then I'll have to cut the end of it off. So I got to peel off the cover here, and then this paper strip on the back is where the adhesive is, and then I've got to take the end off of that to expose the connector. So we've got the previous strips laid out here, and then here's the connector I'll have to put in here. So I'm going to start setting this strip down in this channel. So these 2 aluminum pieces, I'm not planning to join them in any other way. I just lay the strip across it and let that hold it together. It seems to have worked pretty well on the other ones. this tape has these lines where you can, it says where you can cut it, so I actually adjusted this a little bit so I could set that cut mark right at the end. So I'll go ahead and cut that now. Alright, strip is cut and placed in the channel over here. Okay, got it plugged in and it's working. So now we'll put the diffuser cover on it. Alright, the diffuser's installed. Last thing is I get a little bit of light bleed at these junctions between the cut aluminum channels, so I've been putting a little piece of electrical tape across that. Okay, that electrical tape took care of that. So we still have a little bit of work to do on wiring to get these wires to lay down as flat as we can, but we're pretty much done. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Alright, a little bit more work to do with our dimmer and our motion detector and the programming. So you can see I've blocked off about the last 2.5 inches of this, and now the light is more pleasing in the way it strikes this wall here. So the wire comes up from below here, and then I bring it to this Y, and so one end of the Y goes out for that strip, and then the other one goes in here, and then we just have connectors joining those two strips after that. So this shows how the system will respond when we enter the room during the daytime. So this is a Z-Wave motion sensor from HomeSeer, and so I'm going to build a mount for this so that I can put it up here and have it fixed, but for temporarily I'm just going to orient it like this. And so when you walk in the room, it senses your presence, and then I'm using that signal to decide to turn on these lights, and then once I leave, then it will turn the lights off. So this shows how we'll really have these lights set up. Is we'll let the down lights also be involved in this. I'll put Z-Wave dimmers on those, and so we'll get the whole room lit. We'll get some light on the thinker, and it'll look very nice. So we have some switches here. This one here is currently a motion detector switch for that light over there. I'm just going to put that on a normal dimmer switch just for cosmetic reasons, and we're probably not really going to be using that switch. And then I've got two banks of switches for the ceiling, so I will replace both of those switches with Z-Wave switches, and these were actually kind of hard to find, brown Z-Wave switches. So I'll switch those over. Those will be connected to SmartThings, and we'll make decisions based on time and the input from that motion sensor over there. I had these two banks of lights in the ceiling that were connected to two different Z-Wave dimmer switches, and the problem with that is, any of you who've ever used SmartThings before, you know that if you put two lights on to go on at the same time or off at the same time, they don't. They're a little bit different by a few seconds. I didn't like that. I want all these down lights in the ceiling to come on and off at the same time. So I changed the wiring here. I put both banks on one single Z-Wave dimmer switch, and I left this switch alone to take care of that light over there. And then I just put an outlet over here, a Decora outlet, just to fill that spot. So I like this a lot better, and we are now done with this project, and it looks great.